r/AskReddit. Serious, what's your true supernatural / unexplainable, downright creepy story? We had a computer room in our house that was at the end of a hallway. So I went down the hall to use the bathroom and I could see the glow from the computer screen dimly lighting up the room. Then it looked like someone walked in front of it and cast a shadow on the wall. I jumped and then started laughing. Geez, you scared me. I look in and there's no one in the room. I booked it out of there and avoided that bathroom for weeks. When I was in 5th grade I was walking to the bus and it was just breaking dawn. I had to walk about a half mile down a back road with woods lining either side. About halfway down I was surrounded by about 8 or 9 dogs, not wolves, but like actual different breeds of domestic dogs. They didn't make a noise, but they blocked my path in a half circle. I was terrified and ran back home, and when I looked back they were gone. When I think back on it, I hope maybe they were protecting me from an unknown danger down the road that morning. Who knows? Last year I was staying in a hotel with my mom. One of the nights as I was laying in bed I noticed a human silhouette maybe 2 meters away from me. I figured it was just a shadow, so I tried to ignore it but I couldn't. I turned the light on and obviously it disappeared, but when I shut off the lights again it came back. I tried to convince myself that it was just a shadow, but trust me when I say there was nothing in that room that cold made a shadow like that. I looked around the room several times. It also occurred to me that the shadow weren't there the previous nights and nothing had been moved around. It looked just like a human silhouette. I never believed in ghosts, but right then and there I was terrified. I was too scared to look at it, so I turned around and eventually fell asleep. I told my mom about it the next morning and she just shrugged it off. She said I was just imagining things. Fair enough. That shadow weren't there the next night, or the next. A few days after we had gotten back home my mom was doing something in the kitchen, and I was just sitting there studying. Without turning around my mom said, "Do you remember that shadow of a person you saw at the hotel?" I said yeah. My mom just said I saw it too. My blood turned to ice. Mom didn't want to admit that she also saw it. I thought that she was sleeping because she didn't want to freak me out. I'm convinced that if ghosts exist, I saw one that night. My mom thinks it was the ghost of her best friend who had committed suicide just a few days prior. Mom had spent hours earlier that evening writing her a long letter for some kind of closure. Maybe her best friend also wanted to say goodbye. I guess it's not incredibly scary or anything, but it is weird. When I was about 12 our family moved into a new house, new to us, actually quite old. It was in our same village, but down a different lane. Part of it used to be a bungalow, so my room and my sister's room were on the ground floor, down a long hallway. All of the ground floor had walnut flooring, and there was a Persian rug outside the door to my room, to avoid cold toes in the morning. Every night, around 11 or so, I would hear footsteps walking at a fairly slow pace right down the hall, from the end guest suite up past our rooms, and away down the hall to the living room. I was always in bed when I heard them, and so was everyone else. You know how you can tell who a family member is by the way they walk up the stairs, or open a specific door. I knew it wasn't anyone in my family. Plus, it was the sound of outdoor shoes clacking on the wood and everyone in my family wore slippers inside the house. I would hear the footsteps start, fairly loud on the wooden floor, way down the hall, come up past my sister's room, and then there would be a pause while whatever it was walked over the rug. You could hear the gap in the footsteps, about 3 seconds, then they would start again on the other side of the rug and fade out as they walked down the hall away to the living room. Then they would come back, same footsteps, break across the rug, resumed on the other side. I don't remember ever feeling scared, but I never ever went out to see what it was. I would fall asleep to the sound. It would go on for a really long time. It stopped about 3 or 4 weeks after we moved in, and I never heard it again. I didn't really think about it much after it stopped, but I've never forgotten it, and as an adult it makes me shiver to remember it. I'm home alone one day. It wasn't dark or spooky or raining or anything. It was the middle of the day and I had just gotten home from work. Now, I poop with the door open when I'm home alone since why not? I'm doing my business and browsing Reddit as per tradition when I hear my laundry room door open and slam closed. It's only 2 p.m. and my parents don't get home from work until at least 4. My sister was at school, but maybe she left early. I yell hello and reach over and close the door so that whoever is home doesn't have to see me pooping. I hear some footsteps walk into the living room then just stop. I yell again but no response. My dad listens to audiobooks a lot on his phone, so I figured he walked in with earbuds in and didn't hear me. I finish my business up and walk out to see who was home and no one was there. I kept yelling around the house, but there was no answer. I walked outside and it was just my car in the driveway. I started to panic a little bit since my laundry room door is quite heavy and is very loud when it closes, so there was no way I misheard something. I searched the whole house, looked outside on the patio, side yards etc. Nothing. No one was there. I then got this huge feeling of fear and bolted back inside and just sat on the living room couch waiting for something to happen. Nothing happened. No noises, no sounds, no doors opening. Nothing. I eventually got up and went back to my room and never heard anything again. It would have scared the crap out of me had I not taken care of that problem beforehand. When I was in high school my uncle would throw me a couple bucks to help babysit his kids with my aunt. They lived in a 2-story house by the water, nice area. The kids were about 3 and 6, respectively. One day I was sitting in their den on my phone when I started to hear a baby crying. Thinking it was the 3-year-old, I headed to the bottom of the stairs to check and see if my aunt was up there dealing with it. I called for her a couple times with no response. The baby kept crying. I called for her one more time, and when I got no response I started walking up the stairs. Then I heard my cousins and aunt playing outside. All the hairs on my body stood up, and I literally felt a chill run down my spine. I quietly turned around, walked down the stairs, got in my car and drove away. The baby was still crying when I closed the door behind me. A few years later I was drunk at a family party and told my uncle the story. He told me that he and his wife used to hear the baby too, and apparently the previous owners had a kid die of SIDS in that room upstairs. He's uber Catholic and had a mass said for the baby. He said after that it never happened again. Still gives me the willies when I talk about it though. I was invited to a sleepover at my friend's house when I was 9 or 10. It was in a crummy crime-ridden part of town, and I was already apprehensive about the whole thing. Turns out my friend planned for us to sleep in tents outside in the backyard. We go to sleep, and I unexpectedly wake up in the middle of the night. All my friends are gone from the tent. Freezing cold and absolutely terrified, I look around the yard and eventually enter the house. None of the doors are locked, and for the life of me, I can't find a living soul. I'm practically all alone, scared to death in my pajamas. I find a phone and call my mom. About 15 minutes later she picks me up and takes me home. Later I found out that my friends had moved to a different tent in the yard without telling me. In my panic during the night, I thought they had all disappeared. Not really supernatural, but in the moment it was the most horrifying, inexplicable thing I ever had the displeasure to experience in my childhood. I'm an outdoorsman. I'm very experienced in hunting, camping, hiking, and general survival. I'm very familiar and used to wildlife, and I was charged by what I believe was a cryptid called a dogman. It charged me and my cousin. It was not a bear. A bear cannot move how it did, and it was not a normal wolf as they can't comfortably run on 2 legs, whereas what charged us seemed natural at doing. I can elaborate further if you wish. This happened around June or July of 2007 I believe. I was around 17 years old and more cocky then, but still somewhat knowledgeable of the outdoors. My family used to own a cabin in NW, Wisconsin. I basically grew up there in the summer. I knew the woods well, but at night it was wise to stay in the cabin, or at least by the bonfire by the beach, because of bears, wolves, and cougars. One of the creepiest things was, if you were having a bonfire, the tree line was visible from the fire pit and beach, and at night you always felt like you were being watched from that tree line. But during the day the woods always seemed normal, not so creepy. That is until this incident. So this happened somewhere between 1200 to 1400. Me and my cousin were having an airsoft battle. I was in full woodland camo. He was not. I retreated onto the ATV trail into the woods for a tactical advantage, and our battle took us about 200 meters into about a third of the way up the trail. We had enough at this point and were standing at the edge of a clearing on the trail talking, and he was maybe 10 feet from me when I decided to mess with him. I shushed him and said we are being watched. He froze. Then I realized the woods were dead quiet, and I got spooked and started scanning the tree line and the other edge of the clearing from left to right when I saw it. Its teeth gave it away. It was panting and staring at my cousin. I don't expect you to believe me, but what I saw was a wolf as big as a black bear, at least 300 pounds. But it wasn't normal. This wolf was on two legs, crouching next to a tree with its arm grasping the tree, grasping with a clawed hand. It had reddish brown fur. I told my cousin that we have to go, and next thing I know he is sprinting, and I looked back at Wolfie, who had locked on and sprinted a few steps on 2 feet, and then I turned and ran. When it looked like Wolfie was dropping to all fours, it charged us and sounded right on our butts, barreling through the brush, but for whatever reason let us go when we broke out of the tree line and headed for the cabin. What stuck with me the most was the sheer size. Wolfie appeared to be nearly 7 feet tall when upright, and that where it should have had front paws, it appeared to have large clawed hands. Now I'm not sure how to explain it away rationally. I have heard wolves will occasionally kind of walk upright, but as far as I know they can't sprint on two legs, nor do wolves get that big, and black bears more waddle on two legs. The closest description is silly, a werewolf or dogman. Thank you for reading. Thank you for watching. Like the video and leave a comment if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel, follow on Twitter, and join the Discord and subreddit so you never miss a new video.